Once upon a time, there was a kind and beautiful girl named Cinderella. She lived with her stepmother and two stepsisters. After her father passed away, Cinderella's stepmother treated her poorly. While her stepsisters lived in comfort, Cinderella had to do all the housework. She cleaned the floors, washed the dishes, and cooked meals. Her stepmother and stepsisters never thanked her and often laughed at her. Despite her hard life, Cinderella remained kind and hopeful. She believed that someday her life would change for the better. She often dreamed of happiness, but her stepmother and stepsisters made sure she had little time for dreams. One day, the king announced a grand ball at the palace. His son, the prince, was looking for a bride, and every young woman in the kingdom was invited. Cinderella's stepsisters were excited. They talked endlessly about how beautiful they would look and how the prince might choose one of them. They spent days preparing, choosing dresses and deciding on jewelry. Cinderella also dreamed of going to the ball. She asked her stepmother, "Can I go too?" Her stepmother laughed. You have no nice dress, no jewels, and no shoes. You don't belong at the palace." Cinderella's stepsisters laughed along, mocking her. Cinderella felt sad but didn't argue. She helped her stepsisters get ready for the ball, fixing their dresses and hair. Once they left, Cinderella sat alone in the kitchen. Tears filled her eyes. "I wish I could go to the ball," she whispered. Suddenly, a bright light filled the room, and a kind woman appeared. She was Cinderella's fairy godmother. "Why are you crying, my dear?" she asked. "I want to go to the ball, but I can't," Cinderella replied. The fairy godmother smiled. "Don't worry, Cinderella. You shall go to the ball." With a wave of her magic wand, she turned a pumpkin into a golden carriage. She turned mice into horses, a rat into a coachman, and lizards into footmen. "But what will I wear?" Cinderella asked. The fairy godmother waved her wand again, and Cinderella's old clothes transformed into a beautiful gown. On her feet appeared sparkling glass slippers. "Now, go to the ball," said the fairy godmother. "But remember, you must leave before midnight. At midnight, the magic will end, and everything will return to how it was." Cinderella thanked her and got into the golden carriage. When she arrived at the palace, everyone turned to look at her. She was so beautiful that even her stepsisters didn't recognize her. The prince noticed Cinderella immediately. He walked up to her and asked, "May I have this dance?" Cinderella smiled and nodded. They danced together all night. The prince couldn't take his eyes off her, and Cinderella felt like she was in a dream. As the clock began to strike midnight, Cinderella remembered the fairy godmother's warning. "I must go," she said. She ran out of the ballroom, leaving the prince confused. On the stairs, one of her glass slippers fell off. She didn't stop to pick it up. She hurried to her carriage, and it raced away. Just as the clock struck 12, the magic ended. The carriage turned back into a pumpkin, and Cinderella's gown became her old clothes again. She ran home, holding on to the memories of the magical evening. The next day, the prince sent his men to search for the girl who had worn the glass slipper. "I will marry the one whose foot fits this shoe," he declared. The prince's men visited every house in the kingdom. Many women tried on the slipper, but it didn't fit anyone. Finally, they arrived at Cinderella's house. Her stepsisters tried to squeeze their feet into the slipper, but it was too small. Cinderella quietly asked, "May I try?" Her stepmother and stepsisters laughed. "You? Don't be silly." But the prince's men insisted, "Every young woman must try." Cinderella sat down and slipped her foot into the glass shoe. It fit perfectly. The prince's men were amazed. They brought Cinderella to the palace, where the prince was waiting. He recognized her immediately and asked, "Will you marry me?" Cinderella smiled and said, "Yes." They had a beautiful wedding, and Cinderella moved to the palace. She and the prince lived happily ever after. As for her stepmother and stepsisters, Cinderella forgave them, but they learned an important lesson. Kindness and love are more important than beauty or wealth. Thank you for watching. Now it's time to answer the questions. What did Cinderella lose at the ball? What did the fairy godmother turn the pumpkin into? Did the glass slipper fit Cinderella's foot? Write your answers in the comments below. I can't wait to see what you think. See you in the next video.